There's a moment when you realize the person walking toward you isn't lost, isn't drunk, isn't confused. They were looking for someone, and that someone was you. 3 true encounters with strangers horror stories. Story 1. This happened just last night, and I'm still shaking a little as I write this out. I'm a 24-year-old woman, and I work a job that keeps me there pretty late on weekends. Saturday nights especially. I usually don't clock out until well after most people have already gone home or gone out. I don't mind it most of the time. The commute home is easy, same route every time. Nothing I ever really thought about, except last night I got off the train 1 stop too early. I don't even know how it happened. I was tired, probably zoning out, and by the time I realized I was at the wrong stop, the doors had already closed behind me. I stood there on the platform for a second just doing the mental math. Going back would mean waiting for another train, and I was already exhausted and just wanted to get home. My apartment is off a pretty busy street, and I figured it was only a few residential blocks. People do that walk all the time. I told myself it was fine, so I started walking. The residential blocks were quiet in the way that late Saturday nights can be, which is different from, say, a Tuesday. On a Tuesday, that kind of quiet feels normal. On a Saturday, it feels like everyone who was supposed to be outside is somewhere else having fun, and you're the only one left on the street. The bars and noise were a few blocks over. Where I was walking, it was mostly dark houses and parked cars and the occasional porch light. About 2 minutes in, I started feeling like this was a mistake. Not because anything specific had happened, just because I was alone and it was late and I was a woman, and those 3 things together in a quiet place start adding up pretty fast in your head. I told myself I was halfway there already, and turning back would take just as long, so I just picked up my pace and kept my eyes moving. I kept glancing over my shoulder. Every time I did, there was nothing, just the empty sidewalk behind me, the orange glow of streetlights, a parked car here and there. I checked probably 4 or 5 times and saw nothing each time. Then I checked one more time. There was a man. He was running. Not jogging, not power walking, not moving fast in an ambiguous way that you could talk yourself out of. He was sprinting full speed directly at me. He wasn't saying anything. He wasn't calling out a name or yelling hey or anything that would make it make sense. He was just running straight at me in complete silence, and he had clearly been much closer behind me than I'd realized, because there he was. It took me a few seconds to actually process what I was seeing. My brain kept trying to find a different explanation for it. Maybe he's just in a hurry. Maybe he's late for something. But there was no other direction he could have been heading. He was aimed at me. Then my body just took over and I ran. I'm not a runner. I don't work out in that way. But I have never moved that fast in my life. The second I started running, I knew one thing clearly, which was that I absolutely could not go home. If I led this man to my building, to my door, that was worse. So I didn't go home. I just ran. There was a late-night sports bar on the corner near my complex. I had seen it 100 times and never once thought about it as anything other than a bar. Last night, it was the only thing I was thinking about. A man on the other side of the street had been walking in the same direction as me, and he noticed what was happening. He called over and asked if I was okay. I told him I was being followed. He looked back and said he didn't see anyone, and I turned to look too, and the man chasing me was still there, still moving toward me, close enough now that I could make out the shape of him under the street lights. I didn't wait to explain anything. I just said forget it and kept running. I hit the door of the sports bar, and I was already talking before I was fully inside. I told the employees I was being followed. I told them there was a man outside. A couple of the guys who worked there didn't even hesitate. They went straight outside to look. They saw him. He was out there on the block, moving around, looking, like he was searching for where I had gone. One of the employees got in his face, and apparently that was enough to chase him off. I don't know exactly what was said. By that point, I was inside trying to breathe and not doing a very good job of it. I spent the next half hour having a full panic attack in that bar. The staff were genuinely kind about it. They sat with me, brought me water, let me talk through what happened, even though I kept repeating myself and probably wasn't making a ton of sense. One of them flagged down a police car that was passing by. The officers came in and I told them what happened, but there wasn't much they could do. No crime had technically been completed. The man was gone, and I hadn't gotten a good enough look at him to give a useful description. I understood that. It didn't make me feel much better, but I understood it. They let me stay at the bar until I had calmed down enough to function. Then a couple of the employees walked me home. I know I shouldn't have been walking alone at night. I'm not looking for that particular piece of advice. What I keep coming back to is the silence of it. The fact that he said absolutely nothing the entire time. He wasn't trying to scare me or mess with me or get my attention. He was just running at me as fast as he could, and he wasn't going to stop. I don't think I'm overreacting. I think that man wanted to hurt me, and I think the only reason he didn't is because I ran first and ran fast enough. That's the part one keeps sitting with. Story 2. I live in a college city that's also near a lot of amusement parks and tourist areas. The cities on the outskirts have entire gated communities filled with huge vacation rentals. Some of these houses are basically mansions with pools, game rooms, theaters, and more bedrooms than anybody would realistically need. A couple months ago, one of my friends rented one of those villas for the weekend and threw an end-of-semester party. It wasn't an open party posted online or anything like that. She invited her friends and some of her cousins around our age, and everyone was allowed to bring a few people. I went with my boyfriend. At the busiest point, there were probably 30 to 40 people spread throughout the house. Some people were outside by the pool, some were drinking in the kitchen, and others were in the game room. There was also a theater upstairs that people kept going in and out of. A smaller group of us planned on spending the night, so people had overnight bags, purses, chargers, and blankets lying around. I first noticed this guy maybe an hour or two into the party. He looked around our age, probably early 20s. There was nothing about him that immediately stood out. He was dressed normally, talking to people, and acting completely comfortable. I assumed he came with one of my friend's cousins because I had never met all of their friends. I remember seeing him talking to my boyfriend and some other guys near the game room. When I walked over, he joined the conversation like he already knew everybody. He even knew a couple of people's names, so I didn't question it. The first time someone asked me who he was, it was honestly kind of funny. One of my friends pulled me aside and asked if I knew who he was, and I told her I thought he came with one of our friend's cousins. We were all drinking, so it became a joke for a while. People kept asking each other who invited him, but nobody seemed seriously concerned. Eventually, someone said they remembered seeing him walk through the front door with a group that had gone outside to get drinks and other things from their cars. When somebody finally asked that group, they said they didn't know him either. They remembered him walking inside directly behind them, but they thought he had already been at the party and had just gone outside for a minute. One of them had held the door open for him without thinking about it. At that point, we were all laughing like, so who the hell is this man? It was weird, but there were so many people there that we still thought there had to be an explanation. Maybe the person who invited him was outside. Maybe they had already left. Maybe one of the drunk people there had invited somebody and forgotten. He wasn't standing in a corner staring at people or doing anything that screamed danger. He was social, played games with people, and moved around the party like everyone else. At one point, I was standing near a conversation where he commented on how big the house was. He said something like, "There's so many rooms, but there's also a lot of people here. Where is everybody even going to sleep?" It didn't seem like a weird question because people were already talking about who was staying and who was leaving. Someone explained that only a smaller group was spending the night. A few couples had bedrooms, and some people would probably sleep in the theater because it had large reclining seats. The theater was the main reason anybody was going upstairs during the party, so nobody really paid attention to who was going up or coming back down. Later that night, one of my friends got way too drunk. Another friend helped her upstairs and put her in one of the bedrooms so she could sleep it off. That room was also being used by a few people who were staying overnight, so there were bags and other things inside. My friend left the bedroom door open because people were going to be going in and out, and so anyone passing by could check on her. A little while later, the same friend who had helped her upstairs went back to make sure she was okay. The bedroom door was almost completely shut. She knew she had left it open, but at first she assumed someone had closed it because of the noise downstairs. When she opened the door, the guy was inside the room alone with our friend. Our friend was still passed out on the bed. Her purse was open near her, and the guy was standing by the nightstand holding her phone. My other friend immediately asked him what he was doing. He said the phone had been ringing and he was trying to figure out who it belonged to. Then he said he had heard someone throwing up earlier and wanted to make sure she was okay. My friend told him he didn't even know her and had no reason to be alone in the bedroom with her, especially with the door basically closed. He kept saying she was misunderstanding the situation and that he was only trying to help. The arguing woke our drunk friend up enough for her to look at him and ask who he was. My other friend started yelling downstairs, asking who brought him, and telling whoever he came with that they both needed to leave. People started coming upstairs and gathering in the hallway. At first, everyone expected somebody to step forward and claim him. Nobody did. One of my friend's boyfriends is a lot more confrontational than the rest of us. He walked up to the guy and directly asked who he came with. The guy said the people he knew had already left. My friend's boyfriend asked for their names. He gave one first name, but nobody knew who he was talking about. Then he said he might have gotten the person's name wrong because they had only recently met. Someone pointed out that earlier he had acted like he knew one of my friend's cousins. He said we had misunderstood him. According to him, he never said he knew them. He only said he had been hanging around with that group during the party. My friend's boyfriend told him nobody there knew him, so he needed to leave. What really bothered me was how calm the guy stayed. He didn't get angry, embarrassed, or nervous. He just shrugged and said something like, "My bad, I thought it was an open party, it's not that serious." Then he walked downstairs and left. For a few seconds, everyone just stood there. He acted so casual that it almost made us feel like we had overreacted and accidentally kicked out some confused drunk person. Then the friend who had been sleeping checked her purse. Some of her cash was gone. That was when everyone started checking their belongings. Someone couldn't find their car keys. Another girl's wallet was missing. Somebody else couldn't find their AirPods. A group of us started searching the house. When they checked the theater upstairs, someone opened the storage compartment inside one of the reclining seats. There were several things inside that clearly didn't belong together. 2 wallets, a set of car keys, AirPods, a watch, loose cash, and a couple pieces of jewelry. 2 driver's licenses had been removed from the wallets and placed at the bottom of the compartment, and both IDs belonged to girls who were at the party. Everything belonged to different people and had been taken from different places around the house. One person had left her wallet in the kitchen. The car keys had been on a table near the pool door. The AirPods had been inside a jacket in the game room. Nothing technically left the house because he was confronted before he could take it. But someone had gathered all of it and hidden it inside the theater. We couldn't prove that he had moved every single item, but he had just been found alone in a bedroom holding our friend's phone with her purse open beside him. People also started remembering that he had gone upstairs multiple times throughout the night. Nobody thought anything of it because the theater was up there and people had been coming and going all night. I know people are probably going to ask why we didn't immediately contact the police. There were a lot of people drinking at the party, including people who should not have been. Everyone was worried the police would show up, treat him like a regular party crasher, and focus more on everything happening at the house. Nobody wanted my friend to get in trouble or lose the rental. In hindsight, we probably still should have called. Since the house was under my friend's name, she contacted the property manager and resort security. The rest of us only know what happened afterward through the updates she gave us. The house had a camera facing the front entrance, and the community had security cameras throughout. The front camera showed the group we remembered coming back from their cars. The guy was walking toward the house alone, several feet behind them. Right before they reached the door, he sped up and fell into step with them. When one of the people held the door open, he walked inside without saying anything. The group thought he was already with us. Everyone inside thought he had come with them. Security found more footage of him walking around the community before he entered the villa. They couldn't figure out how he originally got through the gate. He wasn't connected to my friend's reservation, and there was no guest pass under his name. From what the property manager told my friend, they checked with the nearby villas he had been seen around and contacted the relevant renters or property managers. Nobody recognized him or claimed he was their guest. The property manager was apparently furious with the resort because the community advertised itself as heavily secured. Somehow, a random person had gotten through the gate, wandered around the neighborhood, and walked into a rental without being stopped. For a few weeks, my friend didn't hear anything else. Then the property manager contacted her again. Security had stopped the same guy inside the resort on another occasion. He wasn't staying there and wasn't listed as anybody's approved guest. They checked his identification and connected him to the footage from our party. His name wasn't common, so my friend looked him up. She found a Facebook profile that matched him, and then found court records and an older local article. He had previously been convicted of theft. He had also been arrested for breaking into a home in a nearby neighborhood and taking wallets, electronics, and other belongings. I don't know what legally happened after our incident. My friend was told the footage and information were given to law enforcement and that he was permanently banned from the resort. Since nothing actually left the house, I'm not sure whether he was ever charged for what happened at our party. I still think about how easily he got inside. He didn't force his way through the gate or break into the house. He just walked behind a group of people and let everyone make assumptions for him. He stayed for hours. He talked to us, learned people's names, and heard that some of us planned on sleeping there. Had my friend not gone back upstairs when she did, I don't know how long he would have stayed or what else he would have done. The scariest part is that if nobody had questioned him, he probably would have spent the night in that house with us. Story 3. This happened about 10 years ago when I was 18 years old, working as a cashier at a small grocery store in southern Illinois. I want to be clear about how small this town was. Less than 2,000 people. Everybody knew everybody, or at least recognized everybody, so a stranger stood out pretty quickly. I'd been working at this store for a while at that point, and the job was pretty routine. You learn the rhythms of the place fast. You know which regulars come in at what time. You know when the deliveries are scheduled. You know the closing routine almost by feel. That night was supposed to be like any other closing shift. Our semi-truck showed up maybe 30 minutes before we were supposed to close. That was a little late, but not unheard of. The driver was a white guy, probably 55 to 60 years old, heavy-set potbelly. I didn't know his name. I'd never seen him before that I could remember. I wasn't really paying close attention to him at first because I had things to do. Part of closing was bringing in merchandise we kept outside during the day, and I was working through that. He walked over to me while I was doing that and said he'd hurt his leg and needed me to look at it. He was making these noises, kind of like if you clench your teeth together and breathe in sharply through them. That kind of hissing pain sound. He started pulling up his pant leg and kept saying things like, "See that? Can you see that? Get closer. Come take a look at it." I looked at his leg and honestly I saw nothing. It was also nighttime, so the visibility wasn't great where he was standing. I said something like, "Huh, yeah, that sucks," and tried to go back to what I was doing. He got more insistent. His tone shifted from asking to something more demanding. He kept saying, "Come look at my leg," like I hadn't heard him the first time. And there was an edge to it now that hadn't been there before. That's when I actually stopped and paid attention to where we were both standing. I was near the store's awning, which had lights running along it. I was actually in a pretty well-lit area, but he was standing just at the point where the light cut off, just past that edge where it goes from lit to dark. And when I thought about it, he hadn't moved from that spot at all. He kept gesturing for me to come to him, to step forward into the dark part. I told him I was studying art in school and didn't know anything about medical stuff, which was true, and I turned back to my task again. He stopped me again. "Just come over here and look at it." He was pretty fed up with me by this point. I could hear it. He was pushing harder, so I told him I could call him an ambulance. I figured if his leg was actually hurt, that was the right answer anyway. His whole demeanor changed the second I said that. Immediately. No, I don't need that." And then more of those pain noises, and "I just need you to look at it." He did not want an ambulance anywhere near him. I filed that away and just kept working because I was genuinely falling behind on closing at this point. Once I got back inside, a woman came up to me. I don't know if she was a customer finishing up her shopping or what. She said, "That man is faking an injury." I kind of laughed it off and said I figured as much but didn't want to be rude about it. And she looked straight at me and said it again. Same words, same flat tone. "He's faking an injury." She wasn't joking around or making conversation. The way she said it the second time, with that look on her face, made it feel like a warning more than a comment that sat with me. Because at that point I still had more stuff to bring in from outside, so I had to go back out there. And he was still there. He started up again as soon as he saw me. This time I told him I wasn't allowed to be off camera. That was a lie. I was, at that exact moment, off camera. But he didn't know that. I watched his eyes go wide. He started looking around, scanning left and right, checking the area. He asked, "There's cameras out here?" And then took 2 huge steps backward, not normal steps. 2 big, fast, deliberate steps away from me, putting distance between us quickly. Those steps bothered me more than anything else that happened that night. The size of them, the speed. It was automatic, like a reflex. Whatever he'd been planning, the word camera had cut right through it. He was still talking, still trying to get me to come look at his leg. But I'd shifted tactics. I told him he was standing in the dark, and I couldn't see anything even if I went over there. I told him to come inside where there was light. I said it like I was being helpful. I said it because right at the store entrance we had one of those monitors where you can see yourself walking in. A visible camera setup. I wanted to see what he'd do if I pointed him toward a camera he could actually see himself on. He hesitated. Then I watched his eyes go to that entrance camera. He asked if it recorded. I told him yes. We had a lot of theft problems. The whole store was covered. He said something like, "That's a smart idea," in this completely different voice, almost casual. I reminded him we sold Tylenol inside if he needed something for the pain. He didn't want to come inside. I went inside. I locked the door behind me. I never saw him again after that. I think about it a lot more than I probably should for something that technically nothing happened in. But those 2 steps back, that's the part one keep coming back to. A man in real pain doesn't jump like that when you say a word. He just doesn't.